Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about DoorDash and how insidious a lot of these gig economy jobs really are. And I think it's really important to call attention to this because I believe we're heading into a period of great economic transformation, and a lot of people are already losing jobs, and I think it's going to start kicking up the pace of job losses within the next probably like 18 months. So I think 2026 and 2027 are going to be very difficult for workers. I think people who find themselves locked out of the economy for one reason or another, um, they're going to be looking to gigs like DoorDash and Instacart and Uber to basically make ends meet until they find their next job. Unfortunately, the next job probably won't exist, or it's not going to be the type of job people think it is. I think we're seeing greater gigification of the economy writ large. And I don't think people really understand that what this means is that the cost burden of your own employment is being shifted on to you. So in the past, with W-2 jobs, you went to an employer, you worked at that employer. In exchange, the employer provided you your salary, but it also provided you benefits, right? So health insurance and your 401k are two of the big ones, right? With, and then of course, if depending on your job, you would be provided with equipment. So whenever I worked at a corporate desk job, I was given a computer, right? Like I never had to bring my own MacBook into the office. That would be weird. Like everyone was given their own computer. You were given your own licenses and stuff for whatever software you use. Like the costs of performing your job were shouldered by your employer, not by you. Gigs have changed that, and there's been some conversations around this. I think California passed a couple laws with regard to gig drivers and freelance workers to try to protect them. But I think that's kind of firing back in a lot of ways. But I don't think people really realize if you do this full time, you're not actually getting what you think out of it because there's other costs. You're paying your own taxes and self-employment taxes. You have to pay your own 401k. If you're driving a car and doing gig work, you're also paying for gas and then obviously depreciation on your vehicle. And then of course there's excess risk, and a lot of insurance providers don't really like when people do this. So depending on how you play the insurance game, you might have higher premiums as a result. So there's a lot more costs that go into this that people realize. And then of course, if this is your full-time income, you have to pay for your other benefits as well. So like health insurance and that kind of thing. So I want to say I like people like this. I discovered Amanda and Isaiah's channel actually on YouTube Shorts. I think they're great. I love that they're working towards a bunch of different goals. One of those I think is saving for a down payment. But right now, Amanda is doing DoorDash in order to make rent. And I think that's noble, but I think it's worth calling attention to what this actually looks like mathematically, because you have a lot of people like this. You have a lot of, other like YouTube channels and content creators who solely focus on gig work, and really they're in the business of like selling sponsored products and selling like digital courses and stuff. They're not actually making money doing the gigs. And I think it's really easy, especially if you're in a desperate situation, to get caught up into this without knowing all the costs. So I think it's important to call attention to all this because the economy is rapidly changing. And frankly, I didn't say this in the beginning, but I'll say it before we dive in. I don't think the services being provided by things like DoorDash are sustainable for much longer. I mean, you've seen they partner with Klarna to offer pay in 4. So you can pay your Chipotle burrito in 4 installments. And I think it's just a sign like people don't have the disposable income they once did. So, I think ordering Starbucks via DoorDash is about to become a thing of the past, especially as young people lose incomes and they can't afford it. So even then, you're going to have a flood of people going in to do gig work that already doesn't pay well, and then it's going to be a race to the bottom in terms of wages to get paid. So I think this is not a good place to be in, and I don't want to diminish what Amanda and Isaiah are working towards. I think this is if your situation necessitates this, I think this is a decent option. It's not bad, and I don't I don't want to like talk down on anyone who does this, but I just want to add transparency to what this actually looks like and what it entails. So here's one of her videos she put out.
Rent is due in 28 days and DoorDash is my main source of income at the moment, so come dash with me. Dude, get out of town. So good. The first order of the day was just completed. It was a Chick-fil-A order for 5.7 kilometers, and it was $7.45. I didn't get a chance to film this order, but it was 4.1 kilometers, and it was completed for $5. Not the best, but hey, it's okay. I'll take what I can get. The next order is a shop order at Safeway. There's 8 items, and it's a total of 7.1 kilometers. Honestly, this order took longer than expected, and 2 of the items were unavailable, so it wasn't really worth it, but it was $7.25. The next order is at Burger King, and it's 5.2 kilometers, I believe. You have a good one as well. That order was completed for $6.55. The next.
So I don't know if you've been picking up on this, but almost all of her orders at this place have been a $2 base pay from DoorDash, and the rest has been made up from tips. So if people stop using DoorDash, and if they start reducing their tips because they're starting to feel pressured by economic contraction, like, this is going to impact the gig workers. Like, it's not DoorDash itself that's compensating these people. It's through tips. That's how they're making their money.
Next order is a shop order at Safeway again. I can't remember how many items there are, but it is 6.6 kilometers. Okay, I don't like this Safeway. It's the same Safeway as my last order, and they didn't have 2 items as well. So Safeway needs to update their inventory. That order was completed for $13.50. The next order is at Chick-fil-A for 8.7 kilometers. And that order was completed for $5.50. I'm back at Chick-fil-A for another order, and it's only 2.3 kilometers, so let's get it. And that order was completed for $5. I don't know how I'm at Chick-fil-A again, but this order is for 2.8 kilometers, I believe. And that order was completed for $5.45. The next order is for 2.3 kilometers at Panera, and honestly, the orders today are not good, but hey, it's okay. That order was completed for $4.11, so I'm hoping this one is a better order. Praise the Lord, I finally got an order that was over $5, so let's get it, and it's only 2 kilometers. And that order was completed for $7.50. Let's go. The next order is for 13 kilometers at Ike's Love and Sandwiches. I really want to try this place one day. And that order was completed for $9. For a total of 3 hours and 33 minutes, I made $76.31. Not the best, but it's okay. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.
Okay, so let's break this down, because I'm a super nerd and I love breaking things down. So I took that video, that was from September 6th, but she also had another one I saw from August, both of them from August, that were on YouTube Shorts. And so what I've done is I've just compiled the data here. So in all of her her videos, she does kilometers. I think they're from Canada originally, her and her husband, so that's why they do that. But I converted everything into miles. So when you do these gig apps, you have to take mileage into account, because that's wear and tear on your vehicle, but it's also gas that you have to consider. And usually, I've done DoorDash, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a minute. But when you have places that are dispersed further out, it's a lot harder to make any money doing DoorDash, because you're just spending all your time driving. So, it looked like a lot of her places, she had one that was like 13 miles or 13 kilometers. So, like, almost like 6, 7 miles. So if you have stuff that's within 10 miles of one another, I think it's usually okay. But once you start going past that, you're basically spending all of your time driving. And then if DoorDash is only paying you $2 for the delivery, and then you're at the mercy of the person receiving it for their tip, like, you're just not making very much. So this was her mileage for 3 different dashes. And then her gross income ranged, I think her goal was to hit $100 per shift, but she never actually achieved that. So one was 83.41, another was 99.40, and then the last one we just watched was 76.31. And then her time average, but it was between 3.5 to 4.5 hours per shift. She did between 10 and 11 orders per shift. Okay, so let's actually break down the numbers here, because while this might be like what she's earning on paper, that's not what she actually gets to keep, and that's not what she actually gets to work with. So right off the bat, she has to withhold taxes. I just did a 15% withhold. It's actually probably going to be higher, because you're going to have self-employment, and you're also going to have, obviously, your income taxes. And so I think she was dashing in Arizona. I don't think Arizona might have state income tax. I forget. But you'll have your state income tax, your federal income tax, and then because you are a gig worker, you're a 1099 contractor, you will also pay self-employment. So this is probably going to be a little bit higher, frankly. But, just for a basic measure, I put 15 here. So right off the bat, she's looking at $11 to $15 per shift. So if her shifts are, what's the average here? 86 $86, per shift. She's looking at, deducting this much right off the bat. And so that's just money that's not there. You got to pretend that doesn't exist because you got to pay Uncle Sam. And then I use a gas calculator just to calculate the gas based on the distance she went, an assumption of a 25 mile per gallon usage rate. Of course, if you're driving within a city, that's probably more accurate. And then a $3.19 price per gallon of gas. And so, you're looking about $5-6 for 3.5, 4 hour shift. So not terrible, but significant. I didn't do any depreciation because, that varies from vehicle to vehicle, and I don't know anything about her vehicle. So I didn't do that, but that is something also you need to consider, especially if you have a car note and you're still paying that off. Like if you are depreciating the value of your car, doing Uber, DoorDash, or Instacart, or whatever, faster than you're paying it off, you're going to end up underwater on your loan. So once you deduct just the tax and the gas, your net income actually is closer to $60-$70 per hour or per shift. And so you're looking right here at an net income between 16 dollars per hour, and then per order you're looking at six, five and a half, $6-7. So I took some averages over here. So the average based on these three shifts, 1674. Your average shift length is about four hours. The average number of orders that you're going to get per shift is 11. And so the average number of orders per hour is going to be less than 3. And this makes a lot of sense. So I've done DoorDash before, and I stopped doing it because the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And I'll show you in a moment what broke the camel's back for me. But kind of, you have to think of it mathematically, right? So there are 60 minutes per hour. Okay. So you have to assume, just for easy, like sake of an analysis, assume it takes, 15 minutes per delivery. So that includes receiving the order, driving to the location, picking it up. So going inside, picking it up, and then driving to the customer's location. So maximum, if everything takes about 15 minutes to do all those things, at max, you're going to have four orders per hour. And so you need to maximize the per order value in order to be making, the $20-$30 that some, DoorDash influencers are making. But realistically, that's not practical. So if you're just starting, you don't really know how to play the game. So you're going to get a lot of crappy orders. You're going to get, low value ones for things like Chick-fil-A and McDonald's. You saw one, she didn't have a tip on one of them and that she received. So you're going to have cases where you don't get a tip. And so you kind of have to figure out which restaurants pay well. And unfortunately, the fast food places usually don't pay well. So you have to figure out how to navigate that. And then you also saw she did a couple shop orders. Those take more time. So if you have to physically go into a store and do some shopping for someone, especially if they don't have something in stock and you have to look for a replacement, instead of spending 15 minutes on, the entirety of that order, it's probably going to take you, a half hour, maybe 40 minutes. So instead of doing a maximum of say 4 orders per hour, you're only able to do 2. Okay. So if each of those only pay, $5-7, you're looking at $10 to $14 gross for that hour. So it all comes down to the math and the averages, and you have to play the game, and you have to be discretionary and not go to the low paying stuff. But people starting out, they don't know that, right? So they're just taking what they can get, which is what she's doing. So it's not really good use of her time in that regard. So her average hourly take home is, like I said, $16.74 per hour, which isn't terrible considering where we are in the economy, but it's also not great. McDonald's workers are in Chipotle, I think now $15 an hour. Like there's even in California, I know she's in Arizona, but in California, I think they have a minimum wage law now. It's like $20-$25 an hour. I've talked about that in other videos, and I think they're trying to pass a $30 minimum wage, if I recall correctly, in Los Angeles ahead of the Olympics. So you have California and very liberal leaning cities that are being very proactive on upping the minimum wage laws. So this creates a problem for DoorDash drivers and gig workers because they're not covered. They're by those same laws. They are 1099 contractors. And so this woman is busting her butt trying to deliver things to people. She has good spirits. She has a great work ethic. Like she's out there getting it. She's hustling. I respect that. But now she's making less than other people in comparable roles working in certain industries just because there is a minimum wage. So yeah, it's going to be hard for her It's hard to compete with that. So this is why this really is a race to the bottom in terms of wages. But I actually wrote a piece about this back in 2023 because I was doing it in North Carolina. And I mentioned that in this piece some of the same stuff I just shared. You know, you're paid per dash you do, and you have to maximize the number of dashes you do per hour. But there's things you don't consider or that come up with this that you might not consider. So traffic could suck. You know, you could be in a traffic jam and that eats up your time. You get to the restaurant, the meal isn't ready. I had that happen to me before. All sorts of things. I had issues. My phone kept overheating. I had a Pixel at the time, so maybe it's a Google issue, but that really impacted my ability to do orders because you're dependent on your phone. And so my phone kept overheating. So it kept shutting down essential services on my phone. Like it would go into hibernation mode. And a couple times it turned off navigation. So I would have to like complete orders in the dark. I had no idea like where I was going because the app stopped working. And so like what do you do? What do you do in that situation if you're, you know, delivering food on the outskirts of town, as I did a couple times, and you don't have cell service, you know? It's, you know, not good. And I also, you know, I wrote this again in 2023. Base pay was $2 to $3, and based on what she's reporting in her TikTok from 2025, it's still two to $3. So, you know, everyone talks about wages, and you hear things about the gender pay gap and wages not keeping up with inflation. Okay, here's a great example. You got a base pay from 2023 that's the same in 2025, but the costs of living have gone up. So I see DoorDash as a really parasitic company, for, you know, to be totally honest. I don't think it adds any value. Like the value it adds is that it provided an algorithmic network that connects different actors within a local economic ecosystem, but that has all come at a cost, right? You have local mom and pops now that can't compete with big national companies like Wendy's, for example. They can't compete with advertising on the platform and placement. There's a lot of extra fees that come with DoorDash. So if you have again, you're a national chain like Wendy's, you have enterprise level agreements with DoorDash, you can absorb the fees that come out of every order far greater than a standalone mom and pop restaurant, right? So the mom and pops, they're not on it, they don't get it, they're not getting the sales. I mean, they were for a time, but I think a lot of them have left because of the fees, right? And then you have the workers, right, who are hustling, you know, and they're not protected by any local laws. It's not a, I mean, it is a form of employment, yes, but it's not a stable form of employment by any means. You're kind of at the mercy of, again, the tips you're getting and the demand for that period of time that determines how much work you get. And so I find it very parasitic because they've layered on this digital ecosystem within local economies, and the folks at DoorDash have no accountability to the workers, but both the drivers and the delivery folks, or the restaurants and the workers at the restaurants who are providing these services. So I see exploitation on all levels of this. I don't see really any value that's being added. And you can just look at the fees, look at the costs, look at how much people are getting paid. Like you can argue there's value in the algorithm they've created, but then you look at the financials and the money and who's getting paid what. And DoorDash seems to be keeping a large chunk of change while making it harder for employees and businesses to operate in their local economy. So the thing that killed me with this was this order. So I distinctly remember this. I was on like the northeast side of Asheville. There was two orders from the same Chinese restaurant, and so DoorDash didn't denote how much each order paid. It just said there was two at the same restaurant, and then the delivery. I think they were like 5 miles apart from one another. So for all intents and purposes, you know, kind of going to the same place. So I think it came up with $7, maybe. I forget what it told me, but I think it came up with a number that made sense to me, and I thought it was only one order when I accepted it, so I just accepted it. But when I got there and realized I had to pick up two, I was like, oh, okay. You know, wasn't aware of that. They kind of snuck it in there, and so I picked up this order for a woman named Brooke, and let me tell you, this order just okay, it was $6. Okay, so this order was $6 and the dash I had made too. Okay, so the base pay for that order, this bag of wonderful Chinese food, was base pay was $2 and there was zero customer tip. So I made $2 on that delivery. So I zoomed in here. You can see the zoom in. So this is a $60 order that this person paid no tips on it. And I have my critiques about the tipping economy. You know, I hate it, but at the same time, there are certain jobs I think that merit a tip. And so one of that is delivery drivers, because in many cases, those drivers are putting wear and tear on their vehicle and they're expending gas to bring something to you. So it's not just, you know, I hate giving tips to baristas, for example, that just flip a tab at a coffee shop and pour my black cup of coffee and just hand it to me, right? Like there's no skill, there's no effort beyond their general job title that would warrant any sort of excess remuneration for the service they're providing. But if someone is bringing something to you or doing a service on top of, you know, what you've already paid for, I think that is worthy of a tip. So, you know, if you're getting takeout and you're physically going to the store and picking it up, you know, okay, you know, maybe forego tip on that. But if you are getting something delivered to you, I think you should pay tip. So these people didn't pay tip. Um, so the dash was $9. That's what it was. So I had two, like I said, I had two orders. So I had Brooke's $60 order. So I made the $2 base pay, right? For hers. And so the rest of this dash, the rest I made was from the next guy. His name was Mike, and he left a $5 tip on like one thing. So he had like, I think like lo mein or something. So she had this huge bag of food. He had one thing, and he paid the bulk of the tip, and she didn't. And so I think people are really overwhelmed by the DoorDash fees, and I think people are really fed up, fed up with it, and it really is excessive. Like I think people are just tired of paying such high fees, and so demand for DoorDash will go down, like I said, especially as people start feeling contraction in the economy, especially as white collar workers, the people who have discretionary income to spend, stop spending it on frivolous things like this. And so that's going to put a strain, but at the same time, you're going to have people like Amanda who, you know, need to do this to make rent. And it's going to be increasingly hard for them to do so. And so, yeah, while she's making, you know, 16.74 per hour, right now in take home pay, um, you know, it's uncertain how much longer that is if people stop paying as much in tips, right? And the base pay only stays at $3 per delivery. Like you're not going to be making anything from it. So I just want to highlight that. I think it's important, just as we're heading into this new economic world, and people like this are like Amanda and Isaiah are using DoorDash to supplement as their full-time income. I think that's what she said in the beginning of her video. It's not just a supplement, it's a replacement for full-time income. It's not as lucrative as people make it out to be. I would love to know if you've ever done DoorDash or something similar, if you've had similar experiences, or if you think of it mathematically like this. Feel free to leave a comment below. And that's what I got for you today. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and be sure to like and subscribe to let me know that you enjoyed this commentary.